Hello and welcome to our discussion on the right to research. Is the global copyright system in need of change in order to make sure that researchers have access to the data they need? Joining me to discuss this are Flynn, Rachael Samberg joining us online, Trina, Patricia Diaz, Handke, and Chidi Oguamanam. Joining us again online, Martin Senftleben. Thank you very much to all of you.
The point of sort of big data research is to be able to take all of the information and extract it digitally and be able to run algorithms on it to pick up trends that a quote unquote close reading of individual texts wouldn't have revealed.
Text and data mining, using a computer to mine information across a huge, I think the word is a corpus of works, a large database of works on a particular subject.
The idea is to take all of the material and put it in one place, and which will require in many cases reproducing the material to be able to run tests on it in a computer system. You can determine where people are discussing emergence of a new variant, or if you're looking at something like Twitter data, or if you're reading the underlying scholarly materials, by extracting information from them en masse, you can determine what particular symptoms are arising in different locations. You can compile hundreds of thousands of hours of police body camera footage and convert all of that into text and then run algorithms to extract racial disparities in the language that police use. You can harvest Twitter data to assess how violence against women is being portrayed in different communities. The social problems that you can study by doing this kind of mass distant analysis are limitless.
We call it the 3-color map, right? So it has a, green for go, red for stop, yellow for caution. Countries labeled green on this map. There is either a specific text and data mining exception, but in most of them what actually exists is a general exception for research. That research exception applies to every work, not just scientific works, for instance, as France limits yourself. It includes not just whole articles, but also whole books, which some countries, like Russia, do not allow. It applies to any user, so it applies to all works, all users, and then it applies to both that reproduction right and the communication right that is required under the WCT. That's only the green countries. Every other country has a problem. The red countries have the most severe problems. In those countries, they've only adopted the Berne minimum limitation and exception for quotation. The yellow countries have all kinds of different limitations on the research exception. Sometimes on the kinds of works that it can be used, sometimes on the kinds of users, only libraries can do it, not individuals, sometimes only individuals, not institutions. And then a very common one is the exception itself only covers the reproduction right, not the communication right. So you can have an individual project, but you can't have a collaborative project.
Well, if you want to be a green country, anybody needs to be able to do this, whether you're an institution, a library, and it needs to apply to all works, whether it's books or movies or images. And finally, you need to be able to do it and then communicate it. Now, when you're communicating it, does that mean you need to be able to sort of make available the underlying data, the corpus that you mined.
You do need to share the underlying corpus with other researchers. How do you make sure that the facts that you're reporting out truly reflect the underlying materials? You have to be able to share the underlying materials with others.
Regarding the map, I've seen that Uganda, my country, is in yellow. But looking at our law, the Corporate and Neighboring Rights Act of 2006, we seem to have a very generous provision on fair use.
It doesn't have the magic words in the US legislation, which is such as. And then it inserted before the word research, private. Private research means you have to be an individual. You're not an organization. And you're also not collaborating with others, right? If you add such as to your legislation, we'll gladly color you green.
When I was doing a study on text and data mining for the European Commission, the emphasis was on promoting research and innovation. So we went off to check this share of text and data mining research, how that varies with more or less permissive copyright implementation framework. The black line is for countries with a high rule of law, and the dashed line is for countries with a low rule of law and less permissive TDM framework. In a nutshell, copyright exceptions and limitations seem to improve things in terms of this adoption of new innovative research methods by academic researchers.
The copyright review was conducted by the Ministry of Law and the IP Office of Singapore. And the aims of the review was to update our regime for the digital era that we're in now. For our review, we actually engaged extensively in public consultations. There's a certain lack of certainty when you go into the activity. Will it be fair use? It's determined by the courts. So we decided we needed a specific exception that sets very clearly the boundaries in which you can embark on these activities without infringing copyright, but also allows the rights holders to have some safeguards. So you will see that it encompasses not just text and data mining is what you were largely talking about, but also machine learning. The applications that you can gain from it has both societal as well as economic benefit, and it really does catalyze innovation. So now I'll go very briefly into the key features. We allow computational data analysis for both commercial and non-commercial users. And we include storing, retaining a copy. We also have a provision in our Act that certain permitted users cannot be overridden by contractual restrictions. And this exception is one of those. But as I said, there are limitations and conditions. You must have lawful access to the work in the first place. You can communicate the copies of the works, but only for verifying the results of the data analysis or for collaborative research or study related to that purpose. And finally, the works in which you are going to make copies must not in themselves be infringing. Or if they are infringing, then the researcher, the person doing the activity, must not have known that. So these are the safeguards we have to balance, yes.
I started really with education, with health, and you've taken us to innovation, to the economic benefits of doing this.
How do we conceptualize this so that Africa and the rest of the developing world is not left behind? Because we're always used to concepts being developed and then coming down to Africa and the rest of the developing world. Now, I ask, who does text and data mining? What infrastructural resources are required to do text and data mining? Where are they located? What skills are required to do text and data mining? And when you ask these questions, the answers are so obvious and straightforward.
And I presume when it comes to knowledge in Africa, you'd want to see a framework in place such that it's possible for Africans to maximize their ability to analyze, to think, to create, to reproduce at the same pace that anyone else is doing it anywhere in the world, at least at that same pace.
That is perfectly so. And I'm trying also to make sure we understand that we've made a lot of mistakes in intellectual property jurisprudence by reifying the rights of rights holders over every other rights. And that's why it's always a contentious debate when we come to WIPO. what about intellectual resources produced from traditional knowledge and informal knowledge frameworks? Are they not mined? Are they not brought into the space to advance research? Who are the stakeholders in that space? They are not authors, they are not conventional libraries, neither are they museums and archives. They are indigenous peoples, they are local communities, they are informal participants in the knowledge economy.
La agenda de Latinoamérica en cuanto a excepciones y limitaciones es la agenda que se hablaba en Europa o en Estados Unidos en los años 90 o antes. Bueno, por un lado, nuestros países están muy preocupados por generar políticas y estrategias de inteligencia artificial, porque tenemos una urgencia enorme de dejar de ser consumidores de algoritmos de otros y desarrollar nuestras propias soluciones y desarrollar la industria basada en inteligencia artificial. Por ejemplo, Uruguay, Chile, Perú, Colombia, Argentina, Brasil tienen sus políticas de inteligencia artificial. Y uno lee las políticas y no nombra este tema.
It really resonates with me what you stressed so many times. Text and data mining is about artificial intelligence. And if we are not resolving this right, we are going to build global divide between countries and continents. And only global arena that can resolve this issue is WIPO.
A mí me gustaría hacer hincapié quizá porque tendríamos que estar discutiendo este tema no a nivel nacional de cada uno de nuestros países, sino aquí en OMPI.
Martin Senftleben.
First of all, there is an opportunity for international policy making. But second, and perhaps even more importantly at this point in time, there is lots and lots of room for experimenting with individual national solutions. So don't wait too long. The time for developing national solutions, copying models from other countries that you like and that seem convincing, the time for doing this is now. Because now you can shape a consensus that sooner or later can also influence the international policy making.
I was reminded of a book that was published in 1996 by an African intellectual, Mahu Mamdani, called Citizen or Subject. In the colonial period, the citizens of the imperial powers were citizens. They had the rights of vote, the freedom to control. They were active participants in society. But in the colonial world, they were only subjects. Is the Global South just going to be the subject of research? Or will they be participants in that research? It's not an accident that the green countries are the Global North. They're the wealthiest countries in the world where researchers are participants. They're citizens in the enterprise. And the Global South, especially those red countries, can only participate as subjects. We can research you, but you can't research yourself.
The message is action at a national level and action at the global level in parallel.